but then you've still got the medium and lows that you have to sneak in here and there, and it's not necessarily just in your production environment, it's in your test environment, it might even be in your development environment, and it gets really difficult to manage not only those vulnerabilities, but all of the information and all of the references and all the classifications and the disclosure dates surrounding all of this. So from a database standpoint, we can't really be biased towards only working on getting the information out there for the critical and the high ones. We try to prioritize them, like Steve had mentioned earlier. You sort of have to decide what's important to you and how soon you want to address a particular vulnerability. At some point, they all need to be covered, though. So we try to get the information out there for the medium ones, for the low ones, the ones for the software package that nobody has heard about since 2004, and it pretty much went into remission because nobody wanted to work on the project. If we see that vulnerability come out, we'll still get the information out there, but we do realize that we need to get the bigger vendors out there first. Again, addressing it back to our target audience, the people who are patching the systems, whether they're system administrators, security analysts, or system engineers.
Yeah, you mentioned the quarterly patch updates, and I think there's a few companies going to that model, and our colleague Brian Martin had mentioned that he foresees a perfect storm situation arising where all of a sudden lots of different vendors have a ton of patches on Patch Tuesday.
Yeah, where Patch Tuesday, Microsoft releases 20, and then Oracle's quarterly falls on that, and then Adobe's quarterly falls on that. So what used to be you could stagger out, say, 20 vulnerabilities a week that you could spread out amongst your team. All of a sudden you get 200 dropped on you like a bomb, and trying to prioritize all of those and getting them spread out again across your team can be a pretty daunting task from the vulnerability management standpoint, but from the information management standpoint, we get the same thing, where it's nice to have a really evenly distributed workflow across a month or a quarter. Sometimes you go into that queue of all the new vulnerabilities that have been released, and what you expected to see 20 is now 150. It can be quite a daunting task sometimes.
John, you had a comment?
Yeah, and actually, in looking at these slides, I couldn't think of anything I wanted to add, but I can add one here to remediation, and that's around resources. You know, my IT staff is X, but the vulnerabilities I get are Y, and there just simply isn't enough hours in the day or days in the week to patch everything. Otherwise, the staff would be doing nothing but patching systems. And so when we look at, you know, what we decide to patch, we look at, if we don't patch something, what's the risk to the business, and do we consider that an acceptable risk? So we will find occasions where we will simply make a conscious decision not to apply a particular patch or set of patches because we think it's within an acceptable risk for the business. Otherwise, the IT staff just gets paralyzed by doing nothing but patching, and the rest of the business, which is supposed to be making money, gets ignored.
Any other thoughts on that? John, will you have the last one? Yay. Okay, we did good on time. So we'd just like to open up to if anybody's got any questions for anybody on the panel. No. Paul.
Let's get the woman over here who raised her hand.
I'm sorry.
In the middle. Yeah.
Sorry. The quiet mic.
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, I'll go with the first in, first out question. Steve, you said that vendors make money on software and expect researchers to do it for free. Have you come across a vendor that has that expectation of researchers? Because when I look at the ecosystem over the last 5 or 6 years, there are so many more opportunities to get paid legitimately, not just VDI, but jobs, like not just doing this as a hobby in your free time. So jobs at vendors, jobs at consulting firms, do you really feel that vendors expect researchers to do it for free?
I may have misspoken a little bit. However, you know, the number of vendors that have bug bounty programs, which is basically the vendors, you know, paying researchers who are reporting things to them, that, you know, there's like just a handful of vendors that do that. There's a general attitude. It may have changed a little bit, and there are certainly more opportunities for researchers to go professional. But there's generally been an attitude amongst a lot of different parties. I didn't necessarily mean to single out vendors. That, you know, for whatever reason, the expectation is that researchers should be doing this for the good of the community, and thus it's a good deed. and shouldn't expect much more than credit, and there's something bad about them if they want something more than credit.
No, they should be playing World of Warcraft. We should probably talk later because I think you and I actually work in the same field quite a lot.
Actually, this just brought up a point I just wanted to make. If there's any reporters writing anything on this and you want to quote somebody, please check with them first to make sure they can be quoted and to make sure they didn't inadvertently misspeak or something like that, because we don't want to get people in trouble with their organization. So, Paul, you have a question.
Each week I read a lot of the descriptions for each of the vulnerabilities that are coming out every week. And it seems that there's a fair number of them that, well, I won't say completely useless, but they're pretty close to completely useless. They tell me there's a problem, and that's all they really tell me. They're not giving me details, and I don't think that helps a lot of organizations that are trying to make a risk-based decision about what to do about that vulnerability. Hey, there's a vulnerability in this product. Here, you should apply this magic fix, and everything will be okay. So what can we do to push vendors to publish more information about vulnerabilities that are usually disclosed internally within that vendor? Or should we? Or will they?
What we found so far is a lot of vendors, and I'll name one for example, HP is really, really bad about having information in their advisories. They'll say, there's a problem in X, go find it. And because of that, you can see the number of vulnerabilities people are digging into. You look at the focus on the vendors to do that, it's products, and you see the number of vulnerabilities people are finding. Basically what happened was HP actually threatened legal action against someone about 7 years ago for vulnerability disclosure. That set off a whole tidal wave of responses of people focusing on HP products, excuse me, finding vulnerabilities. So what you've seen since then is because the vendor's been acting in that manner, most of the time that you find a vulnerability in an HP product, you see it ending up with full disclosure the next day. Look at all the operations manager vulnerabilities that come out. Every single downloadable product from HP has been ripped 20 ways from Sunday over the last 5 or 6 years because of the way they've been treating the research community and the way they've been holding back information from their advisories. So I'd say the problem's going to fix itself. The customers are going to be upset that the only way they find out about information is when it shows up with Metasploit, and the vendor's not doing enough to educate their customers about it. Eventually, it's going to solve itself. The vendor's either going to get called out by their customers saying you're not giving me enough information, or the researchers will just keep pushing so many vulnerabilities out there that the vendor's advisories will no longer matter. They're not going to be the source of information anymore. The actual researchers will.
I think we can get in one more question, and then we'll just have to catch us all in the hallways, because I think we're short on time. Who's keeping time here? Nobody. Okay. Anybody? Oh. Any other questions? Yes.
So I have a comment and a question on patch Tuesdays and quarterly releases of patches. So as a vendor who releases security vulnerabilities when issues come out, having them on a quarterly or monthly basis makes it easier to plan resources and release them and make sure that there's quality built into that release. I hear what you're saying about it increases the number of issues that you have to deal with at any one time. Do you see that this is a trend that's going to continue? More people are moving towards a quarterly release or monthly release schedule?
I think it is a trend. Patch Tuesday, again, is a monthly event, and with the coming out on a quarterly or a monthly or at least a scheduled, I do see that vendors would probably want to plan their resources more accordingly to that. It would be really nasty if all of the major vendors decided that they would now start releasing all of their patches and advisories on a specific day of a specific month or a specific quarter. From an information management standpoint, we would like to see a little bit more distribution, but that's just because we're being selfish. The vendors need to do what they need to do to protect their customers. If the information all hits on one day or 1 week, we'll deal with it as we need to. It might backlog us a little bit to get the information out to the people who rely on the service that we provide, but that is entirely up to the vendor, and I do see the trend going that way, but that's something that we'll deal with if and when it ever comes down to that perfect storm.
And what we'd like to see is if they're going to do this, if they're all going to, optimize for themselves, will make it easier for their customers to deal with that information. And so making sure you get a CVE, making sure you assign CVSS scores, make sure you have oval definitions so your customers